FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
So I'm going to read a part that sort of is a conversation I was having with some of the more mature students I was teaching. They were 40, 50, 60-year-old professionals who had spent a good portion of their life living in fear of Saddam and who now sort of saw the world after 2003 in the reasonable security of Kurdistan as sort of starting anew, and the way that they had come to know America as a country through the media that they had started watching almost immediately after the invasion. Steven Spielberg, blank stares. Tom Cruise, anxious confusion. Titanic? It was still early in that day's 4-hour class when everyone looked at me as if I was an idiot. Of course they knew Titanic. Everybody knew Titanic. 50 million Americans had seen the film, I was informed, and seemingly every Kurd. As it turned out, however, we could not talk about one of America's most popular exports without discussing the dictator America had overthrown. It started innocently enough. We talked about genres. Some of the older students remembered the classics like Gone with the Wind and Spartacus. One man loved the cowboys. Another said his favorites were the mythology films. What is mythology films? Asked a fellow student. Making use of new vocabulary, he replied. The mythology genre, like Rambo. Every once in a while, someone would just shout out the name of a film. By now I had sacrificed order to excitement over the material. Ghost, exclaimed a deep male voice. The Spider-Man, Shrifa excitedly piped up. In Dahok, one of the northernmost cities of Iraqi Kurdistan, there was a single theater on the edge of the bazaar that sat empty most of the day. It showed, among other things, reruns of Pamela Anderson's VIP. Arbil, as it turned out, had perhaps as many as 4 theaters, and nobody in the class had been to any of them in the past 30 years. In fact, they did not even know what the theaters showed, if anything at all, anymore. Westerns, said General Dallaire, a dapper policeman. An idea the man who loved cowboys quickly corrected. No, he blurted out defensively. They show the kids' movies. Muhammad, an English teacher, offered. They show the movies of sex. Random outburst. I love the movies about engineering. Random outburst. 007? Random response. Yes. And the movies about the CIA and the CPA and the CNN. These questions you ask, they are not good, interrupted a concrete engineer in his mid-40s who enjoyed engineering films and rarely spoke. The question is, why are there not any films in Kurdistan? Ask the class that. Why are there not the films in Kurdistan? Summarizing a barrage of comments, I asked, so you're telling me that there are no actors, no directors, and no screenwriters, and that is why there are no good films here? Yes, the class replied in unison. From the end of the table, a student named Jihad then added, and no peace. When I was young, he continued, I went to the films with my father and mother, but we have had no peace and no progress for 20 years. Yes, but it was not just film in Kurdistan that stopped, added Dallaire. In the 70s, films, then the war with Iran, and then the war with Kuwait, and then everything about war, always. By this point, an elderly professor of physics was worked out. We were not free to create with our minds, only to create what government and politics said. People make movies by themselves and for themselves. We cannot make what we wanted, we were blocked. Mahir, something of a celebrity pop singer who was in the class, kicked in. War maybe, but everything was really about Saddam. Everything had to be about Saddam. You make a movie, it must be about Saddam. He grew sarcastic. You write a song, it must be about Saddam. You write a poem, about Saddam. You write a story, make it the story of the hair of Saddam. Mahir's touch of levity had set the class to exchanging Saddam jokes. No one had heard of George Orwell or read 1984, but the punchline to one joke channeled the spirit of Big Brother. What did the man do instead of buying a television? It began. He taped a picture of Saddam to his refrigerator. That way he was always looking at Saddam, and Saddam always looking at him, just like watching television, only cheaper. I asked why filmmaking had not expanded after the uprising of 1991 and the relative autonomy that followed. Jihad jumped at the question. Art is of society. It is of here, and here we have had suffering for many problems. first from dictator, then internal war. This damage all attempts at art. I hope, from now on, I am optimistic. A people, Jihad seemed to be saying, might be able to throw a dictator off their backs, but it is much more difficult to get him out of their minds. Saddam had stifled creativity for so long it could not simply jumpstart itself again. The civil wars in Kurdistan of 1994 and 1996 had created instability and even sparked some limited prosperity. But the shadow of the dictator continued to loom in the Kurdish mind. Anthony Shadid of the Washington Post described in his book, Night Draws Near, an Iraqi hammering away at the base of a statue of Saddam as Baghdad fell in 2003. "I'm 49, the man said as he went on swinging, but I have never lived a single day. Only now will I start living." A veteran of the Iran-Iraq War from Basra told Shadid, "You had to postpone all your dreams. I like life. I like sports, art, poetry, music, whatever, all these things." In a classroom 300 miles to the north of Baghdad, without a sledgehammer, but with the same angst and eagerness, the physics professor spoke in the day's last discussion. "Our life starts now," he said. 90% of us believe our life starts now, since 2003, since Saddam falls.